Welcome to Yes Also. I'm your host, Susie Barrett. My guest today is Vic Michaelis. You might know them as the star of Dropout TV's Very Important People. Vic is one of those improvisers with the quickest, sharpest kind of brain that I am absolutely, unabashedly envious of. They are on the beloved UCB team Yeti, which was formerly a Herald team and is now a house team and also plays around town at places like the Elysian Theater in LA. And they share a really mind-blowing story about moving schools in high school and deciding to reinvent themselves as an actor by lying about their past and pretending that they used to be a successful actor at their old school. Anyway, I had a great time getting to know them better and also hearing all of their insights about improv. Let's cut right to it.
Hey, Susie, thank you so much for having me. What a blast.
Oh my, isn't it a blast already? We're just in the hello portion and it's a blast.
It's nice to see your face. I feel like I haven't seen you in years, so just getting to chat, what a gift.
What a gift. You're in Vancouver right now shooting something.
I am, that's correct. I don't know why I'm picturing it's also kind of overcast by you. Is that true? Say it is.
Yeah, yep. Uh-huh. Yeah,
Come on.
It is, yeah. It's overcast, and that's what it looks like, and it's making everything that. So yeah, you're right.
Is it nice? Is this
it's
how you
nice,
wanted to start
yeah.
the podcast, talking about the weather for a tight 10?
Yeah. Oh, I was gonna go a loose 30. Is
Oh
that
yeah. Perfect.
cool with your schedule?
Yeah.
Well,
I have 3 hours scheduled for this.
perfect. So does our audience, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Let's chat prov.
Yes.
I don't know your improv beginnings. All I know is that you showed up in boot camp one day and you were already like a fully baked improviser. I was like, oh,
Susie, that is so kind of you to say. Can I tell you the little behind the scenes of that?
Yeah.
From my perspective. So Jacob Wysocki, who is a very good friend of mine now, me and my friend who we would do sketch stuff in college, but just kind of bad sketch stuff, just having fun, fucking around a little bit. And are we allowed to swear? Probably, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we were just fucking around. Well, you gotta check. You don't know who's listening.
Swear every sentence.
I've never said fuck in my life, and now it's just flowing from me.
Okay, yeah.
So we used to watch Bath Boy stuff, which was Jacob Wysocki's sort of sketch thing. And I walk into my first day of boot camp and Jacob is in the class and I see him and I immediately walk outside and I call my other friend, Jacob Hogan. And I'm like, you are not going to guess who we are in LA, baby. Jacob Wysocki is in this improv.
Wysocki was your celebrity sighting, your first LA celebrity.
First LA celebrity sighting. We were just such big Bath Boys fan. It would be they'd drop the videos and we'd send them to each other. It was it was
darling.
So crazy. But I after boot camp, because boot camp was an upstairs downstairs thing when I was doing it, and usually you started upstairs and then eventually you'd come downstairs, and I had ended up downstairs right away. And I called my dad, and for the first 3 or 4 weeks of boot camp, no, probably the first 2 months of boot camp, and I was like, I think I have to quit, and I think I have to leave. I am in way over my head. And he's like, nope, you're gonna go in and your goal is just to get one more laugh than you did the day before. And so I would call him every single day and he'd be like, okay, how are we doing, and how many laughs do we get today? And so he would just sort of talk me through the process, and eventually it just I started making friends.
But also that's so the opposite of my perception from the outside, because you came in, like I said, to me this was a fully baked improviser, and I was like, oh, they're good. They must have already performed in another city on some amazing troupe, and they're just new in town, and
Susie,
they're gonna smoke their way through the scene, and I don't have much to tell them. Susie,
that is so kind. That is so kind of you to say. I did a lot of short form in Vancouver. I took short form classes, which I honestly have found so helpful. And I know that there's this big aversion to short form in the city, but I think it's really fun. It's a very really fun way to start.
Yeah, I touched on this, or Brendan Hunt touched on this in his episode, talking about the perceived long form, short form divide. For him, it was when he was coming through Chicago in the 90s, and it was those two things did not mix. And I think there is still some like aspect of that. They just feel a little bit like different worlds, but I don't feel people shitting on it as much as they used to. I love both. Like, I think short form is great. And it's also what made me fall in love with improv when I was young, you know.
Totally. Well, Boom is largely short form stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all short form. Like we did one long form night for fun and for free, like if any audience wanted to stay after, but also it's a hard sell to be like, hey, so you just watched 2 hours of super fast paced, gimmicky freestyle rap games. Now, if you'd like to stay, we're gonna do something totally different that you've never heard of, and you just shout out one word and then we don't shut up for 30 minutes. It was like, people would leave in droves. We would get them to stay, and they would just shuffle out during our shift.
Just slowly find a pause in the scene to be like, okay, let's get out of here. Let's go.
I wish they found a pause. I wish it wasn't the sound of stampeding feet during our scenes, but I can't say it was.
I think, is it the idea that, like, I wonder if, especially as long form was emerging, you really had to sort of like, especially, when did long form really start becoming popular? Like the 90s? Like late 90s?
Yeah, popular in the 90s, yeah.
So I guess when you're moving more away from like the origins of theater sports and really honestly like the Spolin type like theater games, like you're going from that into like more long form seems like a thing where like you have to make a hard line to be like, this is its own thing, this is a new thing, I do this, I am not doing that, that's what everybody's doing, this is like this new thing that I'm doing. But now both of them have such a presence. I wonder if it's just like it's just like not as big of a deal anymore. And also too, for better or for worse, I really do firmly believe that short form cuts better for filmed.
Totally. Yeah, let's talk about
like,
that.
Long form, I mean, like, you know, there are ways to do it, and there's definitely like measures of success. I just think that long form, you lose some of the magic of long form as soon as it's recorded.
That's true. And I've always said like, oh, this is like, do you know this fun fact that narwhals have never been successfully kept in captivity? Like every time they've tried to catch, that's true. Every time they've tried to catch a narwhal and put it in an aquarium or something, it dies or it, like something happens. So they keep eluding captivity. And I think people have just been like, I don't know. Now I'm assuming this. They're just like, oh, we won't try to catch them anymore. That might not be true. Now they might be so protected that it's like, we can't. But I made up the ending. But the beginning's true.
No, I like the ending. I like that. I'm going to start telling people that. They're going to say,
great.
Where did you hear that? I'm going to say, Susie Barrett told me that is an absolute fact.
Yes. And she said, arrest her if it's not true. So, but for a while I was like, oh, that's like long form improv. It just cannot be captured. It's not meant to be filmed. But I will say that Casey's Holy Shit live streams have you watched any of those?
Yeah, I've done Holy Shit a couple of times too, and I've watched them, and the Varietopia streams where there's like some improv stuff happening there too. Like I think there is a way to do it, especially live on stage like that where you're watching it recorded. Like the live streams feel maybe a little bit different than like the ones that are like recorded and edited, and I don't know why. Do you have some of like the still that I wonder if it's like the perceived danger and the acknowledgement that this is happening real time in a moment that makes it, because otherwise why, like I think I spend a lot of time thinking, especially with recording or like mediums, as to like, why are we doing this in this medium? And with recorded improv, a lot of times I just ask the question of like, why am I watching this in this medium? There's like no reason for it to be a recorded and watched at a later date. I think part of the magic of long form improv and part of what makes it such a special art form is watching it happen in real time, in real life.
100%. It's also one of the few art forms where the audience reaction in the moment determines the course of the show.
Absolutely.
It's a little bit like choose your own adventure stories, but the audience is choosing their adventure by what they laugh at, how hard they laugh, how much energy they give, what suggestions they give. So there is like a dynamic aliveness to the thing in the room. Also, live theater is never going to translate as the same as, recorded. Same thing as like watching a concert film. It's like, yeah, but I bet it was better to be there with the Who in that room.
Totally. But I think you nailed it. Like exactly what you said, where it is like something about the audience helping determine the fate of that in a way that's different with like theater or concerts, because they're going to finish the song the way they finish the song. You know what I mean? They're going to say the next
song
line
already.
Whereas like this, it is kind of like, even if you're watching a live stream, like you don't totally know what's going to happen. But I think we as like humans have a heart for story and a heart for story beats. So watching something that's like pre-recorded at home, it's sort of like, oh, I kind of have an idea of where this might go because I understand sort of like inherently how story works.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. And also there's something to sitting in a room next to other humans. Like, I feel it even if I go to a show by myself, I laugh differently than if I'm next to a friend and we get the giggles with each other. Or like if I sit at a theater and I'm kind of, it's not a full house and I'm kind of back in the corner, I don't laugh as much as if I'm in the thick of it with people next to me. So the contagious laughter changes the way that you consume it as well.
Totally.
The energy of it. It feels funnier, or it feels more exciting because you're vibing off of everyone.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, especially in the way that like trying to explain an improv scene to somebody that wasn't there. It's just like, it's never going to sound good.
Right.
Literally never going to sound good.
No, it sounds tragically awful.
And that's not to shit on people watching live stream. I mean, like, it's very cool that improv, especially like long form improv that largely has lived in like New York and LA, is becoming accessible to other markets. Like, that's so cool. That's
exactly it. And I was going to say, like, yeah, if you're in the city where it's happening and you have a choice, then yeah, go see it live. But yeah, I've taught people in other cities who are like, this is the only chance I get to watch LA improvisers or New York improvisers or whatever, you know, that's a special thing. And all these scenes are starting like all over the country and all over the world right now. All these little baby improv scenes. I don't mean to demean them by that, but
hey, we were all babies, no demeaning.
These little tiny cute boo boo baby.
So tiny, so cute.
They're so tiny. They're trying. No, they're new and they're hungry to see other improvisers perform. Let's back up. I do want to, well, let's stay here and then let's back up. I do want to talk your origin story, but while we're on the medium of filmed improv, you've been doing a lot of this Game Changers stuff on Dropout. Like, you pop up on my TikTok every now and then.
Oh, sure.
Sure. Yep. Heard of it. Talk to me about that. Were you a part of, so Dropout TV is the new iteration of College Humor. Were you a part of College Humor when that was going on?
Yeah. So, so I got hired in 2019 to be like a freelancer essentially from College Humor to fill in on the sketch side of stuff as Dropout was being born and all of their full-time cast members were sort of like moving to like populate and film their shows and things like that. So like there's a year from 2019 and then like into 2020 when a lot of those sketches were getting released where like I'm just in a bunch of sketches and it's a lot of like comments of people being like, who is this? Where did everybody go? Like just because it's like somebody they've never met before that's in these hardly working sketches about a workplace and people are like, I don't know any of these people. But like through then obviously then College Humor shut down. So that's sort of like, talk about origin story. That kind of is my thing. I am an angel of death, I think, for a lot of things for the most part. It's like most network shows I've been on have been canceled like the episode after I appeared.
But you got your episode.
But I got my episode. So it's sort of like I get hired and then things sort of fall apart. I've been in a lot of pilots that haven't gone. So it is nice to be a part of something that seems like, fingers crossed, knock on wood, is on the upswing.
Seems like it has some longevity. You go in for your first costume fitting though, and they're like, so we have this big scythe and you're gonna wear this hooded cloak.
And you're just gonna sort of go in and start knocking on doors a little bit.
Just knock anything that has what looks like lamb's blood on the door frame. Pass that one over. And just skip that.
We don't need to deal with that. Just skip that.
Yeah, it's not worth it. There's legal. Okay, so you got hired. People did not warmly receive you.
Well, you know, people were nice enough, but it was a lot of the comments of like the longtime College Humor fans who were just like, so we watch these sketches because it's like, you know, the personalities and the people we know. And who are these random people that are now sort of a part of those sketches? But anyways, College Humor then was sold to Sam Reich, who sort of like took over Dropout. I don't know exactly how this story works, but it was something where like he then ended up becoming the CEO and like taking over the Dropout side of things. College Humor gone, like the sketch and the online platform, and then it was just this streamer, and then they started doing, it was like a spin-off of this Game Changer show called Make Some Noise, and that was, you know, essentially like a short form improv show, and I got asked to do that with a couple of my friends, and yeah, then they just kept having me back to do stuff. It's so
that's
fun.
amazing. Yeah, and it's such a fun format. It's a little bit, it's like a hybrid. It's a little bit whose line is it anyway ish, but with almost like a little bit of long form ish. It's because you're doing scenes sometimes, or the ones I've seen, sometimes it's scenes, but with where they basically give you the premise.
Yes.
Like,
yeah, that's it exactly. They give you the game or the premise, sort of depending on how like tight the prompt is, and then you do a scene around it, and then they've got like a couple of short form games that go in between the different rounds. And so you have a solo round, which is mostly just like a little bit of a monologue, and sometimes people will interact with you, and then you've got two people scenes, and then sort of everybody get in here scenes for the last round. It's like the fun and the most easy shoot day that you'll ever have.
Yeah, the premises are total softballs, like in the best way. It's like, oh, cool. This would be really juicy to play.
Yeah.
Do you shoot in front of a live audience? Is there anyone there laughing?
We don't, which is actually like, I think, coming back to boot camp, have you discussed like boot camp style stuff on here much? Is it worth mentioning what that is?
A tiny bit, but no, yeah. Okay, so to review, I think we've talked about, but I don't know what order these episodes will air in. Boot camp was an everyday improv practice group that I founded with Jim Woods like 15 years ago, and then ran for 10 years, and then James Mastriani took it over. But it's like you meet Monday through Friday 12 to 2 with the same group of people, and people sign up for a month at a time, and it's just getting tons of reps. And I think like more than anything, what I appreciated most about having that time and space is like I don't necessarily need the audience. Like the audience is a part of like the fun thing for, like you said, like shaping a show, and like, you know, like it's the magical part of improv in a lot of ways. But like I now know what I think is funny, and I know how to, like, I know in my head like how to formulate a joke and why I think something is funny, and that has been the most valuable thing for any kind of filmed improv, especially without a live audience, because then it's sort of like, even if nobody's reacting, I go, okay, this is my sense of humor, this is the way I think this joke formulates, this is how I'm going to proceed with this joke, because this is why I think that this thing is funny. You know what I mean? And it's like that internal metronome for something like that, where you don't necessarily need the laughter, because it just is like in your brain already. You sort of like know. Does that make sense? Right. It totally does. When you're in front of an audience, then you know how sometimes you have like, oh, this is my angle on this scene, this is what I think is so funny to play, but the audience laughs at something else first.
Yeah.
Do you like pivot then and honor that as the new game of the scene, or are you like, no, hold on, guys, I have something better
Usually
than that?
What I'll do, I mean, like I'm like a through and through voice of reason for the most part, but when something like that happens, usually I will stay true to the game in which I've played, because oftentimes it's like the thing that they laugh at is something like flashy and fun, and not something that's like a playable game necessarily. But usually like I will bank that and bring that back as a little like callback or flash or whatever. I mean, it kind of depends on the situation, right? If it's something like big and unignorable, then you gotta sort of like figure out how to divert course. It also kind of depends on who you're playing with, right? Like if it's somebody that I play with a ton, if it's like, you know, if I'm playing with Yeti or like a Lou or a Waisaki or a Zach or something like that, or honestly even like Allie, I'll absolutely sort of.
And you mean any Lou, any Zach, not Lou Wilson and not Zach Oyama.
Oh yeah, anyone. If that's your name, I'll follow it.
Yep.
But I'm like, you know, in those cases, like we've performed so much together and have so much like built-in trust that it's like, yeah, like let's, you know, we'll find our way back to it. But ordinarily, honestly, I'll catalog the laughter and then find a way to bring it back, but continue on the course with like the initiation. I don't know. What do you normally do with something like that?
I don't know. I think I feel like if it's something like a Herald where or like a premise pulling show where I've grabbed a premise from a monologue or an opening and I'm initiating that idea, then yeah, I think I'm the same as you, where it's like I'm not going to divert course. But in more organic play, I feel like the first big laugh, if it's something that we can use as if it's playable, then I'm a fan of honoring that. It's like, 1000%. Okay, this is what the scene is now, and that's the audience determining the fate of the show, right?
Yeah, 1000%. I mean, that makes perfect sense, because I think you're completely right on that, where it's like you are then forsaking your team for the audience if you are to follow the shiny thing, I think, in a premise pull, because then it's like all of a sudden you've heard the audience laugh at something, but then this like thing that you were structuring your team for, those like deep later laughs and like a foundation of a scene or whatever, you're then going like, okay, I guess like I'm just like gonna throw that away to follow whatever it is, and that can be a little bit of a tricky line sometimes. And
you're breaking the form then, like if you're doing a form where you have an opening that's supposed to generate ideas so that you can initiate these tentpole premises, then that you want to honor the form first, I think, or the
and I think you can bank on yourself to go like, we will find like the audience is laughing, the audience is responding to what we're doing, we can continue to build that with what we're doing here. We don't necessarily have to like panic and go like, oh, they laughed at that, that's what we're doing, we're going ahead and we're doing that. You know what I mean? Like you said, in an organic form, absolutely, why not? But in something that is more structured and in something that is more like premise based, I think I think following the course, I mean, like I think most, like, I'm trying to think if there's a show where like something like that has recently happened, and I really can't think of one. I think most people do that, is they'll like bank the laugh, maybe bring it back for something, or like have the character show up again in like a third Beatty type thing. But I think
Aunt Edna's here again.
And it just crushes.
You got always that woman. Yeah. So did you always have strong comedic instincts, or was that something that was trained into you in your short form experience when you started out in Vancouver?
Neither.
It can't be neither.
Neither.
You're still looking for them?
Neither. So like I grew up, I spent a bunch of time in the Midwest before I moved up to Canada, and I didn't do any performing. I started off in a martial arts background, like a lot of sports and stuff like that. I liked performing, but I also didn't have very many friends, so it was a lot of like me and my cousins
kicking
doing, like,
and punching
plays.
each other.
Yeah. Me going, oh, was that funny? Which actually isn't that far off. We did The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe over and over and over again. I was the director and the White Witch.
Just by yourselves? Incredible.
Just by ourselves, make the parents come and watch type stuff.
It was absolutely one of my favorite books as a kid, and then I grew up and learned that it was Christian allegory, and I can't read it now.
Yeah. Though, you know, if you're going to do Christian allegory, C.S. Lewis is like not a bad...
It's true.
Not the worst one. He was pretty progressive in some ways. But he
Great. But that's the bar.
That's the bar. Progressive in some ways, question mark. But so when we moved up to Toronto, I decided I was going to completely reinvent myself, and I just started,
one does.
Completely. I was living in the city. I was moved out of the cornfields. I was like, I am a new person.
How old were you at this point?
Sorry.
How old were you at this point?
16. I just turned 16. And I was like, I'm going to tell everybody that I acted at my old school and that I did comedy at my old school. And
this was a lie? You were making this up?
Completely made it up. I was just like, I'm just going to tell people that's what it is, that's what I do.
Why did you choose comedy and acting as did you always kind of have an eye on that?
Always dreamed it. I just like, I inhaled like SNL and Monty Python and I Love Lucy and all of, just like any Carol Burnett, like all of those old shows, like I would just watch over and over and over again.
And did you have an awareness while you were in your martial arts athletic life? Did you have an awareness that like you missed your calling, or were you envious of comedians, or you just admired them?
So there was like a local children's theater, and I did some stuff over there, and I wouldn't say I was terribly good. I was like,
as opposed to all the other kids in children's theater who are fantastic.
Well, I auditioned for my school play a couple of times, like in my freshman and sophomore year. Did not get in. Like, I just like didn't really have a stage presence. I wasn't very good, and I had this like, I feel like I was shrouded by being kind of a weird kid, and so I couldn't really shake it. I was like, I think if I could start over, if I could get a fresh start, I genuinely think that I could sort of just bullshit my way through this. Sorry again for swearing. And so I was like, I got up to Toronto. I walked into like the theater teacher's room and I was like, I was an actor at my old school. When are the auditions for the school play? What is the school play this year? And she was like, okay, it's a Commedia dell'arte piece. And that's actually great to know that you have a lot of acting experience.
Because we need someone who can carry Arlecchino.
And that is, I was Florindo Artusi, the male lead of my all-girls school production of The Servant of Two Masters.
My God.
Yeah, and I flopped the audition. It was so bad. I was so bad. But because I had acted at my old school and had so much acting experience, my theater teacher was just like, well, Vic clearly just sort of, was like, hasn't done this type of material before.
Right.
And I got it anyway.
That's so wild. Just the power of perception. The
it
power
really
of
is
lies
crazy.
and
And I
manipulation.
started seeing myself that way. So even though I would get so nervous, I would throw up like at this children's theater, and it just went poorly every single time. Everybody thought I was an actor, so everybody treated me that way. So then I started getting the confidence of somebody that was more confident on stage. And that was sort of like what it's really crazy.
You faked it till you made it as a course of your existence.
Yeah.
This wasn't just for a project. This is like you are now an actor.
Yes.
And you make your living at this.
Oh yeah.
because you faked it and convinced yourself that you could.
Absolutely. So it was, I think,
love that.
I mean, like, that really is the turning point of going from like being so nervous I couldn't speak on stage to being like, yeah, it's like fine. It's totally fine. And then I watched like being in downtown Toronto, I would go watch, like they had like student tickets for Second City, and I would just sit and I would watch like, I'd watch a whole weekend of shows. It was like, I do that over and over and over again. It was like, it was such a great learning experience.
Yeah, they started a Second City in Detroit while I was in high school.
Whoa.
So same thing. It was like we were in the suburbs. It was like a half-hour drive. But yeah, as many times as I could go. Because yeah, it's so incredible to watch a Second City show when you're that age, when you're a teenager and just getting into comedy and sketch and. Yeah, watching these, those shows are so tight and polished, but then they do silly, fun improv at the end, and it's so electric, and everyone's so talented.
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
It was so nice because, like, they would open the doors and let people come in for the improv at the end. At least at the Second City when I was there, they would allow that to happen where like you could just come watch the improv at the end if you wanted to. So like sometimes I'd go see the early show and then I would just come back for the improv at the end in the evening. It was just like, it really was the best way to start figuring out, because I think honestly one of the most important parts of improv is like, funny is so subjective, and so finding out like what makes you laugh and like your sense of humor and why something makes you laugh, I think is the most important thing that you can do.
So when did that start forming in your consciousness? What your comedic sensibilities are and what you find funny?
I mean, I think probably pretty like I really think of like the Carol Burnett and the Lucy. Like I really find things like absurd things taken very, very seriously, which I think is also a fairly British sensibility. Like a lot of those Monty Python guys, just like really like height of emotional intelligence, which I think I attribute a lot to learning under you was like a big part of sort of like, really like, especially because like I love voice of reasoning. It's my favorite thing to do. I think it's like such an underrated thing in improv, but I just think it's so fun, and I think it can be really dynamic, and I think that that's like a large that's something that you really push in the LA improv scene, especially is like playing to the height of your emotional intelligence. And also like something that you always said that really stuck with me that I feel like I bring through to a lot of the stuff that I do is the voice of reason is is a person that exists but is the voice of reason in this situation, is like has their own stuff in their own life, and if that comes up, it comes up in a scene, but like they are talking to a character who's having an unusual day today, or like an unusual moment now, or whatever it happens to be in the scene. But like, you know, the unusual, or the voice of reason still is like a fully fleshed out person who like has their own quirks, and on a different day could have been an unusual character. But I like that always really, really stuck with me, and I think makes for really fun improv.
Yeah. So how does that inform the way you play scenes? When you say you see the voice of reason as this like dynamic job in a scene, what lens are you playing through?
I think, you know, Alex Ferdy says this a lot as well, and I think it is like having a want in the scene for yourself. You know what I mean? Like just having something that you want to get out of the scene too, because you are a character that also has wants and needs. And so if it is like, I want to get out of this conversation, like how does this character try and get out of the room? Like what is this character doing in order to try and like exit this conversation in a way that also is like honoring, like I am a person talking to another person, and you wouldn't just like be like, you're crazy, I'm leaving, you know what I mean? 'Cause
Right.
that's like rude, and nobody would ever do that. So did that answer your question? Maybe not.
Not in the least, but we have to move on. No, yeah, no, that answers it. I'm always curious, like if people are approaching their voice of reason as like through an emotional, from an emotional perspective, from a purely comedic perspective, like where are they finding the peaks and valleys in this? You know, is it an acting exercise? Is it purely like comedy instincts? Like they love finding a reason to let the unusual person stay in the room and then find a new way to get annoyed by them or whatever it is. But yeah, it sounds like you're playing from a place of grounded reality for this person who has their own day and their own wants and their own thing.
And I do think it's like largely like an acting exercise, I think is like a really good way to think of it. Like, you know, because I think that is like there's no, I don't know, because I'm like, I'm not afraid to leave a scene if something is like, because I also think it goes both ways, right? It's like an unusual person also has to recognize that like they can't just be like top tier unusual and expect people to like hang out, you know what I mean? Like
I am reminded of a scene that you and I did at Holy Shit maybe like 6 months ago, where I was definitely top tier unusual, and you put headphones on.
Oh.
Like you were like, I'm so sorry, I really do need to get this paper done. And you put headphones on. But it was the best, because then that forces my character to like, I have to like sit and mind my own business for a little while until I can't stand it anymore and just have to ask another question. And then I have to find a way as a human being character to tactfully do that and really try to, you know, I'm so sorry and I really don't want to bother you, but could you pause what you're listening? I'm so sorry. I don't want you to lose your place in your podcast, you know.
Oh man. Yeah, I love that too, because it's also like in real life, right? If like somebody is being so crazy, you get to a point where you just like turn off the emotion of it and just sort of go like, okay, yeah, do whatever you want. I actually don't care. Like I feel like I get like that, at least, where I'm just like, somebody gets so heightened like in real life. Like if somebody's like screaming at me, I'm like, whatever, actually, what you are feeling is way more than anything I feel, and I don't care enough about either you or the situation to like continue to engage in this, and I'll either remove myself or I'll emotionally remove myself. And it's like kind of similar in improv scenes. It's like you gotta like build to that, you gotta earn and build to like the like, you know, screaming at each other, because you also have to care so much about a character to get to that point, you know what I mean? Like I'm not screaming at somebody that I don't actively care about unless they're putting me in a super dangerous situation.
Right. Yeah, and how often in our entire lives do we scream? Like
Truly.
I have maybe screamed once, and I wouldn't even call it screaming, but I've had like a yelly fight, you know, but that's so rare. So yeah, we have to be judicious about when and how we go to those places. Can you imagine if that was just how comedy heightened every time, no matter what? It just starts normal and ends screaming after 2 minutes, every single scene.
Just tough.
But tough.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. I just also find it more interesting for characters having to find like different ways to play their game. And also it like gives those other characters, I think people often think about like the putting on the headphones or being like, hey, like I see you got something going on, like I really have to get back to this, like this is due at 4:00 or whatever, and then like getting back, the voice of reason getting back to like exploring the space and doing what they want to do. I think people sometimes see that as like shutting down the character, but it's so interesting because then that character has to like
fun.
Yeah, it's an obstacle, right? It's like it has to find a way to be like, I recognize that I'm doing something to another person and I have to like live with that and figure out how to play the, like you said, sort of like let it bubble up so hard that you have to do something about it, but you have to find a way to do something about it that this character is going to engage with, especially if you need something from that other character.
Yeah, totally. And as the unusual character, that was such a gift to me because that's like a million new ways I can go. You putting on headphones is candy for the scene because rather than just being the same, it's like, oh, now there's this whole other shiny object. So as a character, I can make any choice I want about headphones now. So it could be like, oh yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. You know, and I try to put my headphones in, but they won't work. And now I need help. You know, I'm so sorry. How do I get the noise canceling feature on? I noticed you hit the, you know, where is it? Or whatever. Like, or I can really wonder about where you got your headphones. Those seem so cool. Or, you know, but just to be someone who can't help but ask the question is really fun.
Yeah, totally. And it is like, then it also is the voice of reason. It also gives you a reason to be like, okay, well now like I've got my headphones on and if I explain this one more thing, then maybe I can get back to my work. If I just like help turn on the noise canceling feature, maybe that's like the last thing that I have to do and I can finally be done with this conversation. It's a way to honor both wants of both characters, just, you know, like for a completely different end goal. Like, oh man, I really do think that it makes for interesting and dynamic scenes, because also too, like, not every scene is going to be like hilarious to every person. That's just like not how people's sense of humor works, but like at least that is a scene that you can watch. It is dynamic, and even if you're like, it didn't make me laugh the most, it's like, it was really interesting to watch.
Yeah. And if it's growing and changing and evolving, then that's hopefully captivating no matter what. If it's the same beat over and over and over in the same ways, then it's already dead. It's flatlined. Like you can't, there's nothing new, you know. I use this example in teaching of peekaboo. Like even a 2-year-old, peekaboo is like the first comedic game that we learn. You do it twice and the baby knows this is the pattern.
Yeah.
And then you do it the third time and it gets an even bigger laugh because you've paid off, you've cemented it, and then you've paid it off. But after 3 times, they start wanting new ways. The laughs fade unless you find different ways to peek. You got to go behind the chair now, or you got to spend a longer time behind the hands and then suddenly pop out, or do between the fingers. I'm giving you all my peekaboo cheats.
I was going to say, how's your baby tour going?
So when did you start doing short form you said you were in high school, or this was past that? This was after.
Like I really, man, it's kind of hard to remember. I really started doing like improv when I got to Vancouver. It was, like I was in like a college troupe. We were called, UTSC TV at the University of Toronto, and it was sort of like a little bit short for me, a little bit sketchy type stuff, and I would say I was not very good, and I loved my friends there, but I didn't necessarily like the performance aspect of it. I just didn't think I was very good at it. I got to Vancouver and I was pretty desperate to meet people, and I had successfully made friends in college doing like the short formy stuff. So I was like, okay, great. I'm going to sign up for an improv class. It's just sort of like, you know, good supplementation for like the acting stuff that I want to be doing. And I started taking classes there, and it's really, actually, it's very cool. So I was doing classes, and once again, I was just like, I don't know that this is like exactly that I'm like cut out for this. And one of my friends, Raquel, was like, this is going well. Like you're doing better than you think you're doing. Keep going. And literally she just moved to LA, and I got to do Fuck This Week with her at at Dynasty this week, which was like a very full circle moment for me, us both doing like
that's great
long form improv together in LA.
That's great. This is a pattern in your life, or at least in your improv life, of you thinking that you're not doing as well as you are doing, maybe because in your early life you were not having early success as an actor, or which very few people do, but maybe that mentality sort of hitchhiked onto your later development, where you're like, I must not be good at this, and other people are like, no, you're actually great.
I never one-to-one that, but I think that actually might be true, is because I literally started all of this by just lying. I think maybe part of it is me just going sort of like, I lied to get here. And it's like, at what point is it like, right, but you've also spent thousands of dollars in classes and have like taken the classes, and you do have the knowledge and you do have the training at this point. So it's actually not a lie at this point. You actually do now have the training to back it up. And also too, like, in high school, who cares? Truly, who cares? It really doesn't matter. And it's actually
like nobody's good in high school. Like, no offense to everyone out there who's in high school, but like, you're just
say
not
that
good
to the
yet.
Jimmy Award winners. Do you watch the Jimmy Award TikToks?
I don't know what that is.
Susie. Well, that's your afternoon. Go take a peek. The Jimmy Awards TikTok. I mean, it's the most talented group of 17-year-olds you've ever seen in your entire life.
I can't wait. I can't wait to watch talented 17-year-olds for the rest of my afternoon. And I'm being goofy about, like, of course there are some talented people in high school. I was definitely not one of them.
I find that hard to believe. What were you doing in high school?
Theater, but like I was like the bottom of the list of every show, like the last chorus person. It's like, well, I guess we have to let everybody in. They pay money.
What was the show? What was your show?
Oh, here's a good example. Yeah. So Anything Goes was the first musical.
Come on, who were you? Sailor? Were you an angel?
Just a chorus. No, and I was a cruise ship passenger, but I decided to give myself something to play by being an old lady. So I was like doing old lady bits, like. And just me trying to upstage for a laugh, like I can't see to, so I'm like feeling around, where are my glasses? And then I put
love
the wrong
that because there is a subplot of one of the main men in Anything Goes, who's the old Crocker? No, Crocker is Billy. One of the old guys. There is a whole thing where he loses his glasses, and it's a big plot point. So I love that you saw that and went, me too.
Yeah,
I also lost my glasses.
Here I am. Yeah, I also had there was a running bit where I was like flirting with the servers and trying to but how funny, I'm a super old lady and this is a young man serving me drinks, and I keep ordering drinks even though I already have one. I mean, anything for attention. But yeah, and then Pirates of Penzance was our sophomore year one, and it was like, that's like a cast of like 100 people, There's like 12 leads, and then
also is such a difficult musically.
We had the talent that year. There was like some very opera leaning singers. That's why I'm like, oh, not all high school kids are bad. I was bad. I'm projecting my own shit.
I don't know. These bits actually sound pretty solid. Like, that's the type of thing that like on a Broadway show, they'd be like, we need a funny character that's going to have a little runner, sort of as we're like changing sets, who can like continue to order drinks or chase around a sailor.
Vic, if I build a time machine, will you take it back and scout me and pluck me for Broadway?
In a time machine, would I also age backwards, or would I stay the same age?
You would stay the same.
Then
I think those are the rules I'm
because
playing
if
by.
I had to go back and then I was also like high school age or younger, I would have to say no.
Okay,
but if I'm my age,
I wouldn't
absolutely
believe you as a scout, or because it would create another lie in your already complicated imposter life?
It created another lie, and also I don't think you could pay me to go back to high school. Like, I don't think there's any amount of money that people could pay me to be that age again.
Yeah, to be clear, you would just be dropping into my high school to watch one of our plays. You would immediately pluck me and take me to Broadway, and that's the end of your duties.
Well, this is tough, so what year are we talking here? You can make one
This would have been like 94,
okay,
93.
Great. So 94, what's on Broadway? 94, 93. That's got to be like, I mean, that's pre-Rent.
That's Lion King is on Broadway at that point. Les Mis.
No, Lion King wasn't on Broadway. That was 98, wasn't it?
Ah, man, I feel like it was while I was in high school, but don't take me to the bank on that.
I'm going to trust you. I'm going to believe you. I'm choosing to believe you in this situation. Okay, so I'm just like, who am I? So like Julie Taymor, I guess I'm like trying to like hit up and be like, you got to see this kid. I love that. Okay, great. Yeah, I can do it.
Okay,
I feel good about
it. Perfect. I waited on Julie Taymor one time.
Did you?
Yeah, I worked at the Four Seasons in Chicago, and I was nerding out, and everybody else was like, who cares? And I was like, I have to have that table. And she was, God, I wish I had just written all of this down. When you're a kid, you think you're going to remember everything. But the sound bites, she was so pretentious. She was basically doing an impression, a bad impression of Julie Taymor. It was like I'd walk by and she'd be like, but I need a more evocative red because texturally, if we're talking the texture of this color, like it was like that kind of stuff. Like
I love that so much. You want people to be like, when you see famous people, you want them doing the thing that they're famous for. And I feel like a Broadway director,
game.
I want to hear her talking about how the red isn't the red enough texture of red in her mind color.
Yes. Give me 45 minutes on the texture of design. I will never stop pouring this coffee. It's running off the table. It's spilling onto the floor.
1,000%. I also think that's why, like, meeting improvisers that, like, I love and admire, it's never that, like, starstruckness, because the thing that they're famous for is space working playing ping pong, and you're just not seeing that in real life. You know what I mean?
There can be no letdown because there is no that in a normal context.
Exactly.
Speaking of that, earlier you said you were caught in this sort of oeuvre of being a weird kid.
Yes.
Do you feel like you're still the weird kid, and do you feel like improv is a way to pay that off? Because to some extent, improv is weird.
Whoa.
We're adults playing sandbox pretend for an audience.
Yeah, definitely. But I also think, at least the way the things that I find funny and the way I like to do it, it's so academic and it's also so much work. I think people do think about like just showing up and playing, and that is like at its best in a lot of like and some of it, and if that happens once or twice in a show, I think that that's like wonderful and magical. But I also think so much of improv is going like, okay, what type of scene am I in? Who is the person that I'm like? A lot of this is happening kind of subconsciously, but it's a lot of like, for me at least, doing like the math of the scene, right? Of sort of like, okay, I'm with a character who is a high status character who is really into their like appearance and looks. So as what is a way in which I can put this like unusual high status character in a situation that is going to like, you know, have them like fighting against type, or do I have them play into type, or sort of like doing all those things and being like, what scenes have I been in where like something like this has worked? Okay, what is the audience responding to? Like, what kind of night is it? Is it the type of thing where they're not really responding, so I should just do the choice that which I think is funniest? Are they responding to stuff that's a little bigger? Like, I think a lot of it ends up like being very academic for me, but that's also how I like doing improv. Like, that to me is the fun of it and kind of the magic of it. But
this makes a lot of sense now. Sorry to cut you off.
No, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. This was why as soon as an improv scene starts, you run to the bathroom and start scribbling on the mirror with a marker. And and it's like a bunch of, some of it looks like numbers I recognize. Some looks like Greek letters. It's like very complicated formula, and then you run back out with the perfect scene.
Yeah. All of the improv shows I've ever been a part of, I'm in the last 2.5 minutes of a scene and I'm responding to something that happened in the opening.
Yeah.
They got to buy me mirrors. It's a permanent marker.
I mean, you know what? I have thought like, this sucks that I can never see myself through all this, but it's honestly worth it. It's worth it for that 2 minutes at the end of each show.
Thank you for saying that, Susie. That means the world, because UCB has sent me a cease and desist. So this is really good to. I'm going to tell them that you think it's worth it, because I love that.
I'm gonna send you a continue and never desist.
Okay.
Okay. This is interesting. I feel like I want to have the brain that you have, and that my brain doesn't work as quickly as yours. Like, I feel like if I could sit down with pen and paper and be like, or have a moment at the top of every scene to pause and be like, well, let me figure out what the best move is here. But I think like you're able to do that in a very rapid fire way.
Though what I'll say is, it's like, I find it's that kind of thing, and I am sure that I heard you say this at some point, which is why it's in my mind, because I feel like you and Alex Fernie are the people that are in the back of my mind a lot of times when I'm like calculating things. But it's like, I know that I'm getting better when I like do a scene and then in the car on the way home I'm thinking about like, oh, like that was what I should have done. And then the next week I'll make a move and I'll get to the back line after the scene is over and I'll be like, oh, that's what I should have done. And then the next week I'll be in a scene and I'll say something, and then the second I say something in my head I'll be like, oh, that's what I should have done. And that just means like the next time I do it, it's coming out of my mouth at the correct time that it's supposed to be happening, which is also the importance of stage time, you know, just like wherever you can get it, because I think that like that is how it works for me.
You're calibrating your computer. So that you're shrinking the time, shrinking the shame time.
Yeah, and honestly, here's my true and tried trick when I need a second, which is maybe I shouldn't be giving this away.
You pull the fire alarm in the theater.
I pull the fire alarm in the theater. I make the entire theater exit. I run to the bathroom, scribble on the mirror. It's only me and the theater, the house manager that knows my secret. No, but it is like opening space work. Opening doors, pouring a cup of coffee, rifling through papers just to give yourself that like literal like 30, not 30 seconds, but like 3 seconds to just be like, okay, great, perfect. Like that sort of thing. I think makes such a difference.
It does make a difference. And it also grounds you in the reality, and it gives something to anchor your character so that you're not just having this standoff of dialogue where it's like line. If you can live in the world as people do, it lets you breathe, it lets the scene breathe, it gives your partner a break too, and makes the reality feel more real.
Yes, and that's like a Susie Barrett thing that for sure that I know is definitely attributed to you, that I bring everywhere I go.
Go pour a cup of coffee.
Go pour a cup of coffee. Go get the mug that you like out of the cabinet. Make sure it's the one that you want, not the one that's at the front. And then you close it, and then you pour the cup of coffee. And then if you need to, start making another cup. Like make sure you know how much coffee you took. Like that type of stuff. Like really just being specific about it. But I think it makes such a huge difference, because even if you don't ever use it again, it's like a hallmark of being like, oh yeah, that's like a person that I recognize.
Cut to your coach giving notes after the show, like, Vic, that scene was going great. You left the roller coaster and went to a cabinet somehow. That was at the top of the roller coaster.
The roller coaster was in my house, actually.
Really? Okay.
I'm really rich. I was rich in that scene, which was what I was trying to show, was that I was so rich that I built a roller coaster through my house.
Great. I rescind all my notes then. That was a perfect scene. No notes. And I really did perceive that you were picking the kind of coffee that you like. That was, I'm so sorry. My bad.
As long as you got that was the important part, is that you saw that I got the mug that I wanted.
So how long did it take after you started improvising before you started feeling comfortable in it, or started feeling like, oh, I can do this, or I get this?
My second year on Herald Night.
Okay, so how long into your journey is that?
So I got very fortunate again, because I got on Herald Night my first audition, which is a lot of it is just kind of luck of the draw too. You know what I mean? Like I was really lucky in that like my first callback, my scene partner was Brendan Lee Mulligan. So it was like teed up for success. You know what I mean? Like across the board, I just ended up in scenes with very generous scene partners who like helped make me feel comfortable. And like I had been doing so much like boot camp and classes and things like that I knew a lot of the people in the room, and I had just been getting so much stage time that it didn't feel crazy.
And also, you're not allowed to say this or you'd sound like a prick, but I'm allowed to say it. You also were already a good improviser at that point. So it's not just luck or your scene partner. Me and your dad and your friend can all tell you that you were doing really well.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. But from my perspective, I was like, there was a bunch of stuff that was like helping me along the way. But you know, it's like that first year. I don't know how you feel about this. I tell a lot of people this too, because I think especially in the UCB LA improv community, which is all I can really speak to, there seems to be especially people that do UCB improv, this like real push to be like Herald Night or bust, Herald Night or nothing. Right. And it really is that thing of like, it's not, unless you really like doing heralds. If you like doing heralds, there's something to, I mean, there's no better stage than the UCB Franklin stage, I don't think. It's like, it really is,
I agree,
kind of magical and kind of wonderful, and having that stage space for at least a year is really great. But also too, if you hate doing heralds, then you're stuck doing heralds on a great stage, and then you grow to kind of hate it, I would imagine. But yeah, Herald Night there's other ways to that stage. If you don't love doing heralds, get an indie improv team that you really love and you get a lot of chemistry with, and start pitching shows different places. You know what I mean? Like, you're way better off doing that, I think.
Yeah, and then you're in charge of who the team is. Herald Nights are put together by a committee. You don't get a say in who you're on a team with. So
yeah,
you could luck out and have amazing chemistry and like, hey, look, they happen to put together the Beatles. Or it could be that you don't get along with any of them, or you improvise so differently that it's hard to trust each other or whatever. And yeah, on an indie team, you're in charge of that. You can play with the people that you play with the best.
Yeah, and I don't think that anybody on my first Herald team would mind me saying that we all really got along and loved each other, but we just didn't totally fit as like a team performing together on a regular basis. You know what I mean?
And that
it was like
happens.
A lot of good pieces. It just really like the clock didn't work, you know? The cogs were all off. So by sort of like, I think by the end of that year, I was like starting to feel, because I personally love doing heralds. I loved my time on Herald Night in terms of like, getting to do heralds every week was something that I just really loved. I think heralds are like pretty mathematical, and there was something just about like the very tight box that was very exciting to me. And meant like, it was very structured, but it also meant like a lot of possibility, and that was very exciting to me. I love a good form.
Yeah, same. The restriction is the gift to your creativity. So it's like within these confines, how can you make this your own? And it's also a good control experiment to see what people's comedic voices are.
Totally.
It's like, given that we all have the same set of Lego, what do you want to build? And the difference between what you build with this and what someone else builds, therein lies your comedic genius and your point of view. And yeah, I think it's a cool forum for personal creative expression.
Yeah, totally. I 1000% agree. And sort of like maybe towards the end of that, I was sort of like, okay, I'm feeling like a little bit like, I mean, there's nothing worse. Like but until you're on Herald Night, there's nothing worse than waiting to hear whether or not you got a callback audition on Herald Night or not. And the only thing that's worse than that is the day those calls go out, waiting to find out if you got cut or your team got put back together, or if you're going to be on Herald Night. That's the only thing more stressful than I think finding out if you got on in the first place.
Right. So for year 2, you got disbanded and reformed onto another team. Is that correct?
Me and Beardsley got put on this already pre-established team. We were the 2 new members on this team called Yeti, which has like a bunch of other Dropout folks on there.
Right.
And that ended up just being such a gift. Like, such a gift. Like, we were good on Herald Night, I think, but I think we really found our stride post Herald Night, and especially like over the early days of the pandemic, we were like just starting to like hang out more and do more shows that we like doing with like formats that were interesting to us. And like, yeah, I don't know. I think as much as I love doing heralds, getting to be on a team with people that I really love and admire, doing work that I was really proud of, like, I was like, oh yeah, no, this is it. This is what it is.
So that's what started igniting your own confidence and your own stride, where you were you were in this team that felt like it fit like a glove, and then suddenly that was the tipping point for you, is what I'm hearing, where you felt comfortable and you felt good.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think it was the first time where I didn't feel like I owed what I was doing to somebody else. Like, I feel like I spent a lot of my early improv career feeling like people liked me, and so were like giving me a shot because I was their friend. And this was the first time that I really felt like I was doing something that I was excited about, that I had like help be a part of building and help be a part of just like the creative process, and that I was important to that creative process, which was like very cool and exciting.
Yeah, you were a cog in the working clock.
Yeah,
and without you, it wouldn't be ticking.
I think like especially coming up in in improv, like as a feminine presenting person, and I'd be curious what your thoughts are on it. There is something I think that like a lot of, like, even if it's not true, there is a lot of folks that will sort of be like, I'll get you in here, like I'll do this. And even if they're not necessarily doing that, it sort of like feels like, I don't know. Yeah. People feel, there was like something to people, feeling like people were holding the door open for me, as opposed to like me being able to open the door myself. You know what
interesting. I mean? Like a politeness, almost literally like the analogy of like in the world, like men holding doors for women, like that kind of.
Yeah,
interesting.
1000%. And I think that there was like a little bit of my own head, a little bit of people making me feel like I know. It was like a good mix, I think, of like me feeling like that myself, like looking out, and then also a mix, I think, of just in general, you know, like people seeing that maybe I felt that way and going like, yep, that's what it is. That's what's happening. That's what's happening. That's it. That's it. And it really, so it was nice being in that position. Like, I think, especially like, you know, 2020, obviously a terrible year, but great year for old Vic doing improv.
You're the only person I've heard of who did improv during that year. Where were you playing, or was this all online? Yeah, gotcha.
It was all online. It really just like, I don't know. It was one of those things where I just like, I think, especially like having the time to reflect and doing it online. And weirdly enough, I think like the chat, because we would do it online and then there would be like a live chat going basically. And so getting to hear people's like, the audience's like seeing written out thoughts from people as we were performing was just very interesting. It was like, not that I would really recommend it, but it was like an interesting, for a regular basis, but was like an interesting thing to sort of go like, oh, that's like what the audience is thinking as we're making these decisions live. And this is exactly people's response to those live decisions that we're making. Yeah.
Talk about the audience relationship determining the course of a show. Yeah. It's almost like a science experiment to be able to read the exact, were any of them insightful, or was it all like, LOL, heart, heart, heart?
It would sometimes
pet,
be,
aardvark.
It was that, but it was also sometimes like questions of being like, wait, does this person relate to this? Is this what this is? Is this what's going on? Like, what is that? Like, is this going to come back? And it was just like interesting seeing people's thought processes on like scenes that were happening, just to see like what questions they had or like things that were coming up for people. But I mean, like, yes, a lot of people being like, LOL, ha ha ha.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I now I want to do that just as an experiment or just as an experience.
Yeah, it like I would definitely recommend it again, not for like a regular thing, but it is fun to see. And again, well, it's just also tricky now because I wonder with some of the really great live streaming options. I mean, I'd be curious to see if some of those live streams had an ability for like an open chat. You know what I mean? Just to sort of see what people were saying. I know like Varietopia streams on YouTube, so I would be curious to sort of I mean, you can't read the comments in real time, but like you know, if Holy Shit does something like that, like going back and just seeing what people's thoughts are in real time on scenes and things like that.
It's interesting. We're almost at time, so I want to ask you just some rapid fire questions.
I love rapid fire questions. Only if I get to ask you 3 questions afterwards.
Perfect. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. You talked earlier about your comedic sensibilities and finding it really important to narrow down like what you find funny. What do you find funny, or what would you define your? You said earlier you like the big broad, like Carol Burnett, Lucy, I Love Lucy, taking an absurd situation and playing it sincerely. Is there something more specific than that, or specific things that you find funny in real life?
I mean, like the thing that I find funniest in the entire world is people trying something earnestly and sincerely and failing miserably. Like, which it maybe makes me a bad person, but I like going to see a lot of like high school and college theater productions. I literally will seek them out in my hometown just to sort of like see what's going on and what people are doing. Like anything like that, anybody earnestly There's a Dropout show called Total Forgiveness that Allie Beardsley and Grant O'Brien did. And there is one episode that I think is the funniest thing I've ever seen in my entire life, where Allie Beardsley goes and sings the national anthem at a AAA baseball game or something like that.
To the best of their ability.
To the
like they're really
best of their ability, like
so
sweating.
good.
They're so nervous going into it, and they earnestly are trying to sing. And I cried laughing. I cry laughing, thinking, like truly thinking about it. If I start thinking about it too hard, I will.
I've got to look this up. Yeah, that's
quite
great.
literally nothing I find funnier than that, which also feels a little bit like it does go into that. Just like I really, really like high status characters that are actually low status, like characters in
That's my favorite.
Yeah. Just like characters that are really, really pathetic, but have like a little bit of power. I really love playing characters that fall under this idea of like getting everything you ever wanted in this world, but just not in the way that you wanted it. Like
give me an example of that. What's a character in that category?
That's a really great question. I feel like when I am formulating a lot of characters, they usually fall into that, just because I find it just like a really interesting idea. I'm trying to think of one in media, and now, of course, because you asked, I can't think of a single one.
We'll put it on the Instagram feed.
Yeah, we'll put it on the
Great.
Check the Instagram feed. It'll be on the Instagram feed.
Yes, also pod. Do you have a favorite object work when you're exploring the world? Or do you have one that sticks out in your mind that was really funny that someone else did, or that you were like, oh, that's brilliant?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Great.
I do.
End of question.
I always really like specific things. Like, I feel like you hold a lot of bags, and Tony does a lot of stuff like that too, where she'll like be holding
a lot of bags.
You hold a lot of bags like this.
Oh, funny.
Like a lot of
yeah.
these. Like the messenger bags, like holding the strap of the messenger bag.
Yeah, I rest my hands there.
That always really makes me laugh. Tony's always really good for stuff like that too. Like holding some sort of a bag. I like real specificity like that too always makes me laugh. There was one time I saw somebody like take off a pair of sunglasses and put it behind their head. You know what I mean? Like, I think it might have just been like a boot camp scene, but watching somebody take off a pair of like Oakley sunglasses and put them like
on the back of the neck,
like their head, that really got me.
Talk about object work that says everything about that character. Just instantly like, great, you're a douchebag.
Yeah. Know exactly who this character is.
No offense to our listeners. I love playing someone who's walking a dog, and while a conversation is happening, like letting my arm wander while the dog sniffs around, or like trying to step over the leash while we're just trying to hold our conversation. But that's what most of my life is anyway. Like just me and my dog walking around and me not being able to hold my arm still. Great. And what can you plug? Where can people see you? How do they watch your Dropout stuff?
Oh, yeah. So honestly, if you follow like Very Important People show, I believe is what it is, or VI People show on Twitter, X? Google it. If you
Never
Google
heard of either of them.
Twitter, I think it's twitter.com, but then it's branded as X. I don't think they changed the domain for that.
Stupid. He's so dumb.
Stupid. Stupid. You could find it there, or Dropout.tv. It's a paywall, but a lot of our clips show up online too. So yeah, I think we have our first episode on YouTube with Anna Garcia. It's a very fun.
Oh, she's so funny.
So funny. Like really perfect. Just got on Herald Night. I'm so proud.
Yeah, I saw that. Me too.
Yeah, the whole team is so great. Benny
Stacked.
got on, and who else? Leonard.
I couldn't say
just
from
plugging
memory,
individual improvisers new to Herald Night. Sarah Kaplan. A lot of really great people.
That's great.
Lots of great people. Go watch Herald Night. That's what I'm plugging.
That's
go
what
to
you're
Herald
plugging.
Night.
Go watch other people at Herald Night. Thank you for being here. Please come back in the future. I'll have more questions.
My God, are you kidding, Susie? What an absolute
I'm not kidding.
treat.
It's not a joke. Yeah. But I could do this for longer, but we're at time and we have another guest coming in, so I gotta cut you loose.
Of course. Who is it? Can I guess?
Yeah.
Dell.
Oh my God, correct.
Crazy.
Yeah, we're doing a seance, so we have to light the smoke and we have to light the smoke.
Light the smoke.
We have to
And
light
if it's
the
black, then you got to pick a new person to improvise.
Pick a new guest. Yeah. Thank you for being here, and hey, don't forget you're not an imposter just because you started as one.
No promises.
Okay, bye-bye. If you have a question about improv that you would like me to ask a future guest, email it to yesalsopod@gmail.com and I will get it on the show. If you're a fan of the show, follow us on Instagram @yesalsopod. And please help us out by liking, rating, reviewing, clicking, sending, talking, and blasting us to your improv communities. That will help us out a lot. If you're a theater who would like to host us for a live recording and improv show, let us know at yesalsopod@gmail.com. A huge shout out to Ryan Rosenberg, who produced this thing with his generous help and his unlimited knowledge about all things podcast. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week. No, we won't, Susie. That's not how podcasts work. They won't even see us. They will listen to us. So it's actually the opposite of both things you said. Thanks for listening, and you will listen to us next week. Maybe. I don't know.